Welcome back to another fanfic reading. This one, hard to believe I'm still not done with it, considering the contents in it. So let's get right to it. Taboo by Repeats. I'll live it. See, sorry happening. A very sexual, Sweet Home Alabama-ish story. Chapter 3, The Date. I couldn't believe that my date with Rito was finally going to happen, even though he didn't know it was a date, but to me, it was going to be my first date with my own brother. To think that it would finally be me and Rito by ourselves. No Lala or her inventions, or no Haruna, just her and Rito. Wait, just me and Rito. This would be the happiest day of my life if nothing goes wrong, that is. Hopefully, nothing does go wrong. Mika looked at herself in the mirror at the outfit she decided on wearing for her date with Rito to the movies. She twirled once and one more time again to make sure that her outfit was cute. But good for her first date, not just with her brother, but her first date in general. She decided to go casual on her date. She wore a white shirt with a pink flower pot pattern on the right side of the shirt. She also wore a white and blue colored sweater since it was the middle of October and she didn't want to catch a cold. A dark blue skirt, black stockings, and a pair of black colored flats. Mika even put on a little bit of makeup, but not too much. She wasn't trying to give Rito hints that she thought it was a date. But knowing Rito's dense mind, he wouldn't have figured it out anyway. Making sure she was all set, she grabbed her black colored purse and left her room. When she arrived downstairs, she saw Rito watching television in the living room and took this chance to surprise him. She slowly crept toward him, and when she was right behind him, she immediately covered his eyes with her hands, and with a smile, she playfully asked, "Guess who?" Very funny, Mikan. Rito chuckled as Mikan giggled before removing her hands. Rito took one look at her and was surprised to see how cute her clothes were, and blushed slightly, and being Rito, complimented her. "You look cute in those clothes, Mikan." Mika could only blush at this statement before she turned her head away. What are you saying all of a sudden?" Mika replied to his compliment as Rito smiled at his sister. Turning around completely, Mika couldn't help but put on a more smile as her cheeks flared up, happy at the compliment Rito gave her. "We should get going before the movie starts," Rito suggested after looking at the clock as Mika turned her head and nodded in agreement. Then the two left the house under Lala's and her sister's care and headed toward the movie theater. When they arrived at the movie theater, Mika and Rita went straight towards the line with the fewest people in line and small talk while they waited. They talked about a lot of things, beginning with what they expected in the movie, school life, and the strange situations they went through ever since Lala came to Earth and left with them. Looks like it's our turn," Rita said as the two walked toward the booth, and Mika gave the tickets to the lady in the booth, who gladly accepted the tickets. "Enjoy the movie," she told as they thanked her, before walking inside with their stubs in hand. Once inside, the two decided that it would be best to get their seats first before buying their snacks, and they did so. They walked up to the employee and he took their stubs before directing them toward the correct theater. "Please head on to Theater 3 and enjoy the movie," he told them as he ripped the stub in half and gave them one half of the ticket. "Arigato," Rito told the employee as he and Mika headed toward Theater 3. Once they reached Theater 3, they decided on where to sit and chose the back row of the middle section of the theater and chose to sit in the middle so that they could see the big screen in full. "Alright then, I'll go get us some snacks before the movie begins." "Do you want anything special?" he asked Mika as she took her seat, putting her purse on her lap. "No, just popcorn and sodas are fine," she told him as he nodded before walking out of the theater and toward the concession stand. Mika was excited and glad nothing happened that would ruin their date so far. She hoped it would stay that way. She could feel her cheeks blush at the thought of their hands accidentally touching each other when they reached for popcorn, but knew it wasn't going to happen since she was getting her own bag. After a while, Rita finally came back and her eyes widened when she noticed that Rita only had one bag of popcorn. "Sorry, Mika, but it looks like we have to share popcorn since I didn't have enough money to buy 2 bags," he told her as he handed her a drink and sat in his seat next to her. She sat her soda in shock. "Maybe, just maybe." It might happen, Mika thought as the image of the hands touching each other played in her head. She blushed at what it would feel like touching Rito's hand again. She wanted to feel the warmth in his hand, the warmth his hands created. She wanted it bad. Mikan, is everything alright? Rito asked, bringing Mikan away from her thoughts as he looked at her. Sipping his soda, she shook her head. No, everything is fine, she answered as Rito looked at her with a raised eyebrow before he shrugged and looked forward as Mikan slightly turned her head to look at his face. She found herself blushing even redder as she stared at him. She looked down to see that the large bag of popcorn was between them, and the same picture played in her head again. Taking a sip of her soda, she reached for the popcorn, and unfortunately it didn't happen that time. She was saddened at first, but she knew there would be more chances later on, especially when the movie played. Speaking of which, the lights in the theater darkened, signaling the start of the movie. The movie wasn't bad, but it probably was only because Mikan wasn't interested in action flicks. She preferred the romantic or romance comedy types. But looking at Rita's smiling and excited face, she can't help but make this movie her favorite out of every movie she saw. She was extremely glad that Rita was enjoying himself, and she was as well. By the time it was halfway through the movie, Rita suddenly stood up, alerting Mikan. Sorry, but I gotta use the bathroom, he whispered to her as she acknowledged and understanding as she watched him leave the theater. Letting out a sigh, she looked back at the movie screen and hoped the image that kept playing in her mind were to come true. She wanted to feel his warmth. However, thinking about Rito's warmth suddenly made her wet, surprising Mikan herself. She lowered a hand to her panties, and she could feel the heat she was generating, and when she touched her panties, she could feel that she was really wet. This is so embarrassing. Even here at the movies, thoughts of Rito make me wet, she thought as she began to move her fingers around, letting out quiet moans. She felt her cheeks heat up every second she felt the pleasure grow. She hoped she didn't get caught by anyone, especially Rito. She looked around to see if anyone was watching her, and she was relieved when no one was. Closing her eyes, she continued to play with herself and turned her toward the door of the theater from time to time, watching if Rito returned. Suddenly, the door opened, and out came Rito, as Mikan immediately moved her hands from her groin section and sipped her soda, trying not to look all flushed. Thankfully, Rito sat back down in his seat without any signs of being suspicious. So, did I miss anything good? Probably. His sudden question made Mikan nervous. However, she calmed down when she noticed that he was just talking about the movie. Nothing exciting, she answered nervously as Rito nodded his head, still staring at the screen. The two continued watching the movie, and Mikan still hoped the image she had would happen. But she became incredibly nervous because of her masturbating and was too afraid to look at Rito, thinking that if she did, she wouldn't control herself. However, she wanted to take a peek to see if Rito was still enjoying himself. She mustered the courage and turned her head, but she was caught surprise when Rito was asleep, snoring slightly. This made Mikan frown. Was I really that boring? She frowned and could feel tears start to well up in her eyes, but she prevented them from falling. She looked at Rito's sleeping face and found herself smiling. He looked so peaceful, and she found herself smiling warmly at him. However, this caused her to get even wetter, and a sudden idea popped to her head. It was risky, but this might be a one-in-a-lifetime chance. She slowly took his hand nearest her and slowly carried it over to her. She kept her gaze on Rito in case he woke up, and she lowered his hand to her groin section. Oh dear. When she felt his fingers touch her womanhood, she bit her lip to prevent a loud moan from escaping her mouth. When she calmed down slightly, she put her hand on top of his and began to move his hand around her vagina and clit. As she let out soft moans as she moved his hand around, which took her pleasure to an extreme level. She could feel the feeling in her stomach quicken with every movement. Still keeping an eye on Rito, she covered her mouth with her free hand as she climaxed. She could feel her juices soak in her panties as she began to pant before she removed Rito's hand from her groin section. She never felt an orgasm like that before, and she was glad that she took the risk. His warmth around her womanhood was nothing like she ever experienced. This really became her favorite movie. At the end of the movie, Mikan softly nudged Rito awake as he slowly opened his eyes. He looked over Mikan and he frowned. Sorry, Mikan. I fell asleep. He frowned deeper as Mikan shook her head. It's okay. Besides, I really liked the movie and was glad to see it with you, Rito. Rito smiled at his sister before they set up and began making their way out the theater. On the trip home, Mika noticed that Rita was fishing with the hand she used to release herself with and began to panic. I don't remember spilling soda on my hand. He said out loud, relieving Mikan. You must have done it unconsciously when you were asleep, Mikan told him as Rito smiled at her. Yeah, you're probably right, he replied as Mikan walked beside him. Rito, with Mikan whispered. Rito looked at with a raised eyebrow. What is it, Mikan? Mikan nervously gulped before she stopped, causing Rito to stop as well. Can we hold hands? Rita let out a surprised shriek as he blushed at her sudden request. What are you? Being confused herself blushed even harder. She turned her head with a frown and with a frown asked, What, you don't want to? No, it's just that you caught me by surprise, he told her as he walked to her and took his left hand in her right, and she smiled warmly at the warmth his hand emitted. Looking up at him, her smile widened to one Rito never saw before. Thank you, Oni-chan, she told him. She rubbed the back of his head nervously. Sure, he answered as the two walked home, hand in hand. This was definitely a day Mika would never forget. She really loved that movie. To be continued. Well, I've everything heard the clip, so till next time.